Earlier this week, city councilors in Lowell unanimously voted to investigate what they can do to add new controls and restrictions on certain breeds of dogs, such as those in the pit bull family. The vote came 3 days after a 7-year-old Lowell boy was killed by 2 pit bulls when he apparently entered the fenced-in area where they were kept. City officials had put extra restrictions on pit bulls back in 2011, but those were dropped the following year when then-Governor Deval Patrick signed a law banning such breed-specific regulations. So is it time to rethink the issue? Joining me to discuss is Lowell City Councilor Rodney Elliott, who spearheaded the push for those rules back in 2011, has been calling for a pit bull ban for years. Nice to see you, Councilor. Thanks for being here. We're also joined by Mike Keiley, Director of Adoption Centers for the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty. Townless Mike, it's good to see you again. Thanks so much for coming. Did I characterize it right? You want to ban them in town? Is that the bottom line?
Yeah, that's it. That was the original proposal back in 2010, and then we got to a point where we put together an animal control committee. We had representatives from various organizations, including residents and Michael himself. So
why? I mean, is it all about this? It's one of the worst things ever. Is it all about that little 7-year-old boy? It was unanimous this time, was it not? At the
it was
city
unanimous
council?
to get a report from the manager. What are our options? What can we do to prevent this from happening in the future? That's my opinion.
So you don't want a pit bull owned by anybody within the city borders of Lowell, is that correct?
We have 108,000 people living in 13 square miles. We have some very, very densely populated neighborhoods. Just a short time ago, the city banned chickens in the city for public health reasons and the difficulty in enforcing that. This is a similar situation. It's not public health, it's public safety. But how do you enforce what's taking place? And by the way, these 2 dogs are not registered in the city. So it's an example.
But had they been, you would have felt the same way, correct?
I think this is a tragedy that should never happen again.
Why is he wrong here? I mean, by the way, I don't think he's suggesting they be banned everywhere. He's saying in dense urban areas like his, where I live in Cambridge, those kind of places, just not a place for pit bulls and humans.
I think we're trying to regulate something from looking at it from a breed as opposed to looking at the issues that are there. And I think he pointed out something that's important, that these 2 dogs weren't licensed. The laws that are on the books already are not being enforced the way that they should be. And so we should be protecting our citizens against all aggressive dogs, regardless of their breed. And we shouldn't be banning dogs based on breed because it's over-encompassing and unfortunately, it doesn't take into consideration nice dogs that happen to be pit bulls.
Mike, I know you're sick of this question, so I apologize in advance. I know a lot of breeds do a lot of bad things, or some breeds do. Everything I've ever read said pit bulls are #1. And I know pit bull is not a term of art. I know it encompasses a lot. But the generic pit bull is far and away the animal, the dog, that causes the most damage to human beings. That's true, is it not?
The reason for that is because the number of pit bulls that are owned. So there is an overpopulation of pit bulls, and so there's an overrepresentation of one breed within the city limits, or in most city limits right now. And if you go back and you read articles from the 1980s and 1990s, you will not see anything about pit bulls because they were not being exploited back then. German Shepherds, Rottweilers, and Dobermans were, and they were having this. People were having the same issues. City councils were sitting and talking about the same issues, but with different breeds.
So why isn't it broader? But if you're so concerned, and I'm sure it's a legitimate concern, even if it disagrees with the solution, why isn't it more encompassing? Or why don't you do something that is unlikely to be attacked by those who don't believe in breed-specific things? Why don't you do it across the board to dogs that have a history of this kind of behavior?
Well, part of the previous ordinance did include vicious dogs that have some behavior. It's the nature of the bite, it's the magnitude, and so this is the death. And whether it's, what led up to this point was maulings. We have, dogs attacked, the pit bull attacking other dogs. So it's it was a spate of attacks that were taking place and the devastating effect that this dog has when it does attack.
Aren't they bred? I mean, they are bred to attack, and everything I read about it, I have no expertise like you do, but their bite, their ability to lock in, and it's unlike almost any other dog.
That's not true, actually, and they were not bred for human aggression. They were bred for dog fighting, and that was bred out of them as well as it became a pet dog.
But human aggression is then a developed trait. I mean, this is not an outlying story, is it?
It's not a developed trait for the breed. It's for individuals, and that has got a lot to do with a lot of different other factors other than the breed.
Like what?
Poor socialization or lack of socialization, interrupted socialization at a young age,
yeah, but
lack of training.
You know what drives me nuts about that for a second? When I read these stories about, not in this case, but in other pit bull cases, sweetest dogs, slept with my young son when he was 2 years old, that's all great, but when departed from that behavior and put the head of my child in his mouth, it really doesn't matter that they have a rotten owner. What matters is the dog, through no fault of its own, did real damage to human being. What's your solution? By the way, forget that. What's your solution so that another 7-year-old boy in Lowell or another city doesn't suffer the same fate?
I think the immediate thing that the city of Lowell should do is they should make sure that the laws that are on the books to protect all people from all breeds of animals are enforced at the largest amount that they possibly can be. And that can't be done with 2 or 3 animal control officers. That needs to be done as a whole citywide approach. We've talked about this, and we know that the possibility of basically getting the police department to be involved in this. We had, and from the conversation that we had in 2011, 2012 on the city council, we agreed to move the animal control department from the Department of Public Works when they were plowing roads instead of enforcing laws.
So you think the things will be done short of banning. What's wrong with his approach?
I just don't think at this particular point it's it's not haphazard, but it's not a comprehensive approach. It looks good on paper. We took animal control out of DPW. The notion to have our 250 police officers, keep an eye out for dogs, for illegal dogs, it would be good. But our police officers have got a long laundry list of other things to focus on. This being one of them, and very important. But it's how can you say with 100% certainty that these people are going to be protected?
You can't say anything.
The notion that
if you move them outside the boundaries of Lowell, you can't say with 100% certainty they're not going to come into Lowell and eat some kid also. But the thing.
But let me just say, the notion that this little boy was allowed to wander around from his yard. We're a city. I mean, kids are going to do that, and.
Well, I hope no one is blaming this child. I mean, I read that the wife of the owner said, "I warned them." The kid's a little boy. The little boy is to blame 0.
And those are the emails that I'm getting. Where was the mother? Children should be allowed to wander and play in their neighborhoods.
Can I just get back to you? If it turns out that he was proposing, the councilor, his colleagues were proposing, let's euthanize every pit bull in town, I would say you've got a point. But if it turns out there's a problem, and the elected leaders believe that you got to go a little bit further than better regulation and better enforcement within the city's bounds. Let them live in the suburbs where there's more room. Let them live in places that are not concerned. Isn't that a common sense compromise, even if you consider it to be an imperfect one, to protect the lives of little kids in his city and mine and other places, Mike?
It has not ever been proven that a ban on a certain breed has ever been effective. And in fact, the regulations...
A lot of states have them, don't they?
Not a lot, no. And the city ordinances that were in Boston...
And counties.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The city of Boston, when they had regulations for pit bulls, they did not have a decrease in the number of bites of their citizens for dogs. It is an ineffective law that does not protect people the way that we believe it would. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And let me tell you that. Let me ask you this.
We're out of time. Yeah.
So in 2006, an English Mastiff killed a 7-year-old boy in Lunenburg, and in 2001, a Rottweiler killed a 5-year-old boy in Springfield. What changes when we talk? This is a dangerous and a difficult situation that is unusual and unexpected, and it's related to these 2 dogs, not to an entire breed.
We got to go. Thank you, Councilor.
You're
Good
welcome.
luck with everything. Good luck to you,
Appreciate
Mike. I hope you guys can reach some sort of common ground and protect kids in cities like that and others. Good to see you both. Appreciate it.